All right. Well, I know I am not the first person to do a video on this game, and I might even be the last person to do a video on this game. Well, I certainly will if you're watching this right as I uploaded it. But this is the game Shores of Tripoli, and I wanted to do a quick overview on it for a number of reasons. One, well, first of all, the designer is Kevin Bertram, and it's published by Fort Circle Games, and I really wanted to talk about it because I got a chance to play it yesterday, actually a couple of times. And I should also mention that Fort Circle Games reached out to me and offered to send me a copy after seeing one of my other videos that I did. And for that, I am super appreciative. And I want to say thank you so much to the entire team at Fort Circle Games. This is a really cool product that you guys have here, a really cool game on a really cool topic, and one that I thoroughly enjoy, as you're about to discover. And I'm really looking forward to the rest of the stuff that you are going to put out. I saw today, actually, some playtesting happening about the game that you're working on about the U.S. Supreme Court, which I think is really cool. And in general, just like really interesting topics for your game. So congratulations on this one and the reception. I know it's gotten a lot of love and buzz around it. And so I figured I would do my own take on the Shores of Tripoli, the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps versus the Pirates of Tripoli, obviously from 1805. And this art on the cover is very cool. A very awesome piece there. Yeah, so this is a two-player, essentially a two-player CDG. You play it on this 11 by 34 like long, narrow map, and obviously it depicts the northern coast of Africa as it was in 1805. Spain, looks like the tip of Sicily there, and then you've got all of these spaces on the map. And this is a very simple game. It's mostly driven by cards. The rule book was not my favorite in terms of like reading it to like conceptually understand the game, although it was a good reference. I did print out a couple of player aids that I found on Board Game Geek about the turn structure that I think really helps a lot. But essentially, what you're looking at here is the war against the Tripolitan Pirates. Say that 5 times fast. The Tripolitan Pirates. Sort of in the sort of middle Napoleonic era when U.S. merchant shipping in the Mediterranean was being taken down by pirates from Africa. And so the U.S. decided that they were going to try and stop this by sending in the U.S. Navy, who was very young at this point. 1801 to 1806 is the length of the game, so 6 turns. Each turn is 4 seasons. Each season is a card play, and each side, whether you are playing the United States here, Thomas Jefferson on the cards here, or the Tripolitan Pirates, that is Yusuf Karamanli, who was the sort of leader of the pirates. You can see him here. You will be playing one of those two factions, and you will be trying to essentially stop the other side from achieving their victory. Now, the U.S. here is definitely sort of the attacker, but it's a really interesting dynamic between the two sides. And the game is very simple to learn. It's not a complicated game whatsoever, but most importantly, it is full of very interesting decisions and really tense moments, which is awesome. And I'll explain my experience through there. But let me just tell you quickly how to play. So these spaces come in either a blue, a red, or an orange variety. The blue typically harbors that are friendly to the U.S. Malta is going to be the sort of base of operations for the U.S. Navy as they carry out operations on the map, attacking specifically. They're then going to send their boats back to Malta to return to port. Alexandria is going to be necessary because this is where the U.S. is going to assemble the army that Yusuf Karamanli, I believe his brother, he wanted to overthrow Yusuf, and his brother was pro-American, and so the Americans tried to install him on the throne. That army is going to form here in Alexandria, Egypt. You're going to need to send some of the U.S. Navy there in order to get that started, and that's when you're going to get these cubes, which you can see here, which represent ground units, and they're going to come in here. Ground units come in 2 types. You've got the Arab infantry, and then the blue ones are the U.S. Marines who are involved as well. And the U.S. has these frigates, so you're going to start with 2 frigates over here in Gibraltar. These are going to be running interception missions and attack missions against the Tripoli pirates. And you've also got the Swedes. The Swedes also have frigates. They're primarily just going to be doing a blockade. You can use them to blockade Tripoli, essentially. Each of these spaces, by the way, if it has this sort of halo around it, this is the patrol zone. So this is where you can set up your ships as the American player to prevent the Tripolitan pirates from launching raids against merchant traffic in the Mediterranean. And so what you might do is you might move some of your ships here. You know, the Swedes might get involved. Anytime you launch an attack with the pirates out of here, you first have to see if they sink any of those raiding ships. The U.S. can also get gunboats. Gunboats will come in at Malta. Gunboats add extra dice for things that the U.S. can do, but it takes resources to build those. And then on the Tripolitan side, they have these Corsairs, which are their pirate ships. They've also got frigates. You can get those as well through some specific circumstances, and they're a little bit more powerful. And you've got your ground units here defending the cities of Dern, Benghazi, and Tripoli. And then you've got Tripolitan Pirate allies who can come into the game via card play and who join the Tripolitan Pirates. And they come in with their own fleets of pirate vessels like this. And if the U.S. doesn't stay on top of them, you can suddenly find yourself with an entire coast of North Africa full of pirate vessels. And one of the dangerous things that can happen there is you can make really big raids into the Mediterranean with all these allied pirate units, and that could potentially lose the game. So how do you lose the game? How do you win the game? Well, the Tripolitan Pirates have it pretty simple. They need to get all 12 of these gold coins. These represent merchant shipping that's been raided, stolen, absconded with, valuables looted, that kind of thing. If the Tripolitan Pirates can get these 12 gold coins, they win immediately, and they're going to do that by launching raids out of Tripoli or potentially with their allies out of the allied cities. And they're going to roll dice. And for every 5 or 6 that they roll, you get 1 die per ship, they're going to get one of these coins. So that's pretty simple. The other way that they can win is they can eliminate 4 U.S. frigates. If 4 U.S. frigates are destroyed by Tripolitan attacks or other means, then the Tripolitan player wins. And so the U.S. has got to be careful to protect these. They can't lose 4 of them. It's startlingly easy if you're not careful to lose 4 frigates and lose the game. And finally, the other way that the Tripolitan player can win is if the U.S. Army is ever defeated in a land combat, such that they are fully eliminated. I guess the appetite for war has gone from the Americans, and the Tripolitan Pirates have secured their power base here in North Africa. So, if you decide to launch the land campaign with the American side, you got to be sure you're going to win, because if you don't win one of these battles on the way to Tripoli, you lose the game. So how does the American player win? Well, the American player wins. The main way that they're going to win is by taking Tripoli. So if they can successfully launch this land campaign, march through here and defeat the ground units, which they should start with some ground units in Tripoli. Let's just say a couple of them started here. But basically, if you can clean Tripoli up of ground units, you can win the game, and ships for that matter. The American player can also win in their event deck. There's some card that if they meet the conditions on it and they play it, they can win by signing a peace treaty. And there's a bunch of different conditions they have to achieve in order to get that. It needs to be a certain year. They need to have accomplished certain things. So essentially, one of those 2 ways is how the American player is going to win the game. So how does the game play? Well, you're going to draw a hand of cards from this deck. Every year, you're going to get 6 cards, and then you're going to play 4 of them. These cards do all sorts of things, like here, raid with all the pirates from Morocco if they're in the game over here. What is this one? Merchant ship converted. So if you do a pirate raid and it's successful, you get to take one of those merchant ships and turn it into a pirate. That's pretty cool. Storms, you can wreck the patrol zone fleet of the Americans if they're in a patrol zone, potentially. What else? Tunisian Corsairs can raid. You can actually attack the Americans. Normally, the Tripolitans cannot attack the Americans. They can only raid, but this one allows you to attack. Algiers, this will get the Algerian pirates to join the war. You can add some troops and defense to some of the locations. You can see the artwork in the game is very good. Here's the more Algerian raids. And there's a whole deck of these. And what's really smart about the game is that you're always going to play through your deck once. So you're going to get to see all the cards, but you're never going to play through it twice. There's always going to be some cards you don't get to play, more than likely. And so it really makes deciding sort of the general arcs that your side can accomplish very important, how you go about trying to get to your victory. This one's pretty fun. As soon as you get intercepted by the Americans, you can randomly discard one of their cards, which is pretty fun. You can capture an American ship that runs aground. There's all sorts of options. But basically, on your turn, you're going to play a card. You're either going to play it for the event, and most events, when you play them, are removed from the game, so you only get them one time. So playing them is really pivotal. So here, for example, if played as an event, this card removed from the game. This is the Philadelphia Runs Aground, which is an American ship that ran aground in North Africa. So you can play it for the event. You can also discard a card to go, I believe, raid with pirates. And this is where you launch your pirates from Tripoli or potentially from one of the other places. You come out into the patrol zone. The Americans and the Swedes might roll some dice. It's two per frigate. And for every 6 that they roll, everything in this game is basically a 6. For every 6 that they roll, so they rolled 1 here, the Swedes, they sink one of your pirates. Then of the pirates that are left over, you're going to be able to roll a die for each of them, in this case 2. For every 5 or 6, you get a coin. Boom, got a coin. I'm on my way as the Tripolitan player to winning the game. It's really that simple. The third thing you can do is you can play a card to build a new ship in Tripoli. So you really only have three options, and you've got really three decision points to make on any given card play. And really, based on what's in your hand, based on what you're trying to accomplish, based on the position of the American player, that's going to really determine sort of the decisions you're making. And it is a very interesting decision space, because as you play the game a couple times, as I did, you start to realize certain things are going to happen. You're going to realize that at some point the American player is going to put together this army. And when he does that, he has cards that can move those armies to the various cities and try and take these cities as they march towards Tripoli. So you better be raiding and putting pressure on him to, instead of using his cards to move the army, that he's putting units in a patrol zone, or quashing your allies, or whatever it may be, so that you can get these 12 coins that you need to win, or so that you can reinforce the areas he might attack so you can defeat him in battle. So that's one of the things to keep an eye on. And you'll start to get a sense of the cards. Like any great CDG, certain things can happen, right? So for example, the Philadelphia runs aground. You roll a die and something good happens for you. However, there's another card in the deck that makes it so you get to roll 2 dice when you play this card and choose the better one. So you may hold on to this, until you get that card. There's cards that remove frigates from the game or puts them, on the turn track so that they come in later in the game. And as the American player, you're trying to sort of play around the pirate deck, and the pirates are trying to play around the American deck. Here are some of the American cards. We'll take a look at these. They can do some cool things as well. What have they got? They've got this is the card that lets you attack the city of Dern if you have the army out and built, and the here's Congress authorizing more frigates to head to North Africa, Mediterranean. This one, in a naval battle, allows frigates to roll more dice than they normally get. This one is launching the Intrepid. This one allows you to destroy some Tripolitan ships, potentially. This one allows you to play a card from the discard pile. Yeah, there's a lot of options. This one allows you to move 4 American frigates. So on the American turn, when you play a card, you can play it for the event, or you can play a card to move 2 frigates, which are these big ships, or you can play a card to build gunboats. And gunboats, like I said, when you make an attack, if there are 3 pirates here, I might have these frigates move into this harbor. I can bring any gunboats in Malta along on that attack, and they can add some dice. So that's another thing you can do as the Americans. You can go on the offensive. But there's a lot of really interesting cards featuring historical personalities. Marine sharpshooters here in a land battle. The U.S. Marines end up rolling better dice. They hit on a 5 or 6 rather than a 6. There's a ton of great cards. Here's the Treaty of Peace and Amity. This is one of the ways that the Americans can win the game. It needs to be fall of 1805 or later, so later in the game. They have to have made all of the allies of the Tripolitan Pirates at peace. Dern has to have been captured, and they have to have destroyed all the Tripolitan frigates in the harbor at Tripoli. If they can do that and they have this card, they've won the game. Always a threat. Tripolitan's got to watch out for that. And so forth and so forth. You can recruit new Bedouin soldiers for the land army. But in general, the broad arcs of how the game goes are going to be defined by what each other's cards can do, and sort of the positioning and strategies that each side are pursuing, because they usually have 2 to 3 solid ones that can get them to winning the game, essentially. Now, what I really like about this game, in addition to sort of the simple rules and the very easy decision points that are really meaningful decision points, is that each side has these 3 events that are available to them at any time. And when they're played, they're removed from the game, but they're very powerful. So they do different things. This one allows you to get a whole bunch of reinforcements from Constantinople. This one allows you to grab the pirate ships that start in Gibraltar and can't move. And this one allows you to raid with every single pirate ship that's on the board, all in one raid. So if you've got all of your allies out, you've got some ships in Tripoli, you can raid with all of them in a single massive attack, and that might be enough to win you the game. The Americans, on the other hand, they've got some powerful things. Thomas Jefferson allows you to move up to 8 frigates, which is almost every ship in the game, and that can be really nasty if they all converge on Tripoli, or they go fight, some other faction in the game, because of a lot of firepower. This one lets you create the army that marches from Alexandria. You can only do that in spring of 1804 or later, so you're really playing half the game before you can use that. And then you can get some frigates to arrive early. So normally frigates under construction come in the next year. This one allows you to bring them in early. Oh, no, sorry, this is the Swedish one. There's another card in the American deck that brings them in early. This is the one that brings in Sweden. So Sweden doesn't start in the game. They start sort of around, and then you can call the Swedes in. And the pirate player has a card where if they give up some gold coins, the Swedes go back home. So sort of finding the timing of when to play the Swedes. Are you watching to see if the pirate player played that card. The Swedes are invaluable because they give you 2 free patrol zone shots, so 4 dice anytime you raid out of the harbor, and the Americans can go do other things. So it's a really awesome game. It plays in about an hour, so it's super short. You can teach anyone this. It is a historical war game about a very interesting topic that there really aren't any games about that I know of, and it's very simple to teach, and it's very rewarding to play. In my first game, I played the American player, and it was really tight. Coming down into 1806, it was super tight. The Tripolitan Pirate player had, I think, 10 of 12 coins. I had not been able to create the army until the end of 1805, and in 1806, I had all the cards I needed to march them in this 1 year from Durn to Benghazi to Tripoli. And I was concerned because the Swedes had left, and I only had 1 frigate patrolling Tripoli. And so all he needed to do was raid twice. And of my 4 actions that year, I had to play, I basically, to go for it to win the game, I had to go for the infantry assault. And so my first play, I managed to sweep into Durn and take it. He did a raid and didn't roll any hits on his raid, so it left me with 2 coins available. My next play, I moved into Benghazi. We had a battle. I took it. Then he started to get nervous, so he played reinforcements into Tripoli because he hadn't reinforced it yet. And of course, obviously, if I take it, I win the game. And then in the battle for Tripoli, I moved the army in. I had my naval fleet in there. He actually won the naval combat. Those reinforcements he played actually destroyed 3. He had destroyed a frigate earlier in the game, and then 3 more of my frigates were destroyed in that naval conflict. So he ended up winning on the final assault of the final turn of the final card play of the game, which was super thrilling, super exciting. It was an amazing dramatic moment there. Then we switched sides and played again because we finished that game in about an hour, and I played the Tripolitan Pirates. And that one ended in a very similar fashion. I was nowhere close to getting the 12 gold coins. I think I had 2. I just was not rolling really well in my raids, and I was focusing on other things, sort of messing with his fleet placement for the most part. But he did form the army early in 1804, and he did move against Durn pretty decisively. He ended up taking Durn, but I had a card that had some of these Bedouin troops desert. And then he moved in against Benghazi, and it was a pretty good assault for him. He had some frigates that he brought in here to do some shore bombardment. He knocked out 2 of my units. I had 2 units left, and then, of course, I rolled, when I was the ground battle to attack, he rolled no hits, and I rolled the dreaded double 6. With both of these units, so that eliminated these 2 guys, and then he just was never able to eliminate the army. So you have to fight a ground battle to the last man. I ended up killing this and the U.S. Marine detachment that was there, and wiping out the U.S. Army in Benghazi, and then I won the game as the Tripolitan Pirates, despite not really pirating too much, but knocking the U.S. military force out of the war. So that was also very exciting and very fun. And in general, like, we had a great time with this. I would play this anytime. This is a great game for someone who is a new war gamer, or is not really into complex rule sets, but really wants some solid, like, CDG strategy gameplay. This game is fantastic. There's not a lot of the decisions matter. There's not a lot of decision points, so you're not going to get analysis paralysis really in this game. There's hand management. There's sort of timing management, and then as you play the game and you start to understand what's in each player's deck and try and play around those things or draw out events you want to happen at certain times. There's a really rich depth to this game as well. And because you can play it in an hour, it's a great opening game for a game night, a great closing game for a game night. Really just a super fantastic production. And I just want to say congrats again to Fort Circle Games. Newer publisher on the block, but they're working on some very interesting things. This was a super interesting topic to do a game on, and it was done really, really well. A part of American history that isn't really widely known, unless you're super into, like, sort of early American history, and even then, everyone forgets that during this time in the early 1800s, everyone talks about Napoleonic history and what's going on in Europe and how the Napoleonic wars were going, and people forget that America fought a war against pirates in the Mediterranean. As, like, sort of a brand new navy. I mean, this is even before War of 1812, right? So this is, like, kind of one of the first tests of the U.S. Navy. But an awesome game. Highly, highly recommend it. This is going to probably make it to my top 10 games of the year at the end of this year, just because it's so good. And I want to thank Fort Circle so much for sending me a copy so that I could do this video. I am going to treasure this as part of my collection. If we ever get the chance to meet in person, I would love to play a game with anyone from the company. And I wish you all the best in your upcoming titles. I know I'm going to be definitely keeping a lookout on those. An open invitation for anyone from Fort Circle who wants to come on the channel via live stream and talk about any projects they've got coming up. But if you haven't checked out Shores of Tripoli, highly recommend you do so. It's a fantastic game. and has a lot of really tight and neat design elements to it that make it extremely fun to play. Thanks for watching this, and I will be back at some point in the undetermined future.